Hey guys, it's Bryony. Welcome back to my channel. So today we're doing my 30/31 week bump date. It's getting real now. We're in the 30s. Feels like we're on the final stretch. So definitely feels like this is actually happening now. So jumping right on into some of the symptoms that I've been having these last 2 weeks. So first of all, last time I mentioned about like breathlessness, I think that was one of my symptoms that was starting to kick in, and that has definitely got worse over these last 2 weeks. So I mentioned it to my midwife at my 28-week appointment, and she said, yeah, like this is quite normal when you're getting bigger, obviously in pregnancy, particularly when you're like in your third trimester and kind of getting towards the end of your pregnancy, you're obviously getting bigger, there's more pressure being pushed up on your diaphragm as the baby kind of gets bigger and squishes things upwards, etc. But she did mention that it can also be caused by anemia, and she did a blood test which came back normal, and that I totally expected. And so I was like, yeah, I think this is just me getting bigger, whatever. However, over the last 2 weeks it definitely got much worse, and it was to the point where I would literally be sitting down doing nothing. I mean, I'd literally be sitting like this on my laptop watching TV, whatever, and would suddenly feel like, oh my god, I can't breathe. Like sitting up, I felt like I couldn't breathe. And it would also happen lying down, like trying to get to sleep at night. It didn't matter whether I was lying on my back, on my right side, my left side. I felt like almost felt like I was drowning. Like I could not get oxygen into my lungs. They felt very dry, not really wheezy, but like really tight. And that's when I realized, hang on a second, I think this is my asthma playing up. So I've had asthma, well, I've been diagnosed with asthma since I was 11. Don't know if I probably had it my whole life, I guess, but I was diagnosed with it when I was 11, and obviously was given an inhaler, but I was very lucky. It's very, very mild, and it's only ever been an issue for me when I've been doing like really strenuous exercise. So I always had an inhaler with me when I was dancing, because sometimes I was doing a very energetic dance, we would, doing a lot, I'd do like 4-hour classes on a Saturday, etc. That would sometimes set off my lungs and my chest. I'd get, for me it was, I would get wheezing, but it was more tight chestedness, and there's sort of, the best way I can describe it to people is almost like dry, like you're sucking in air, but it feels like it's really dry and it's not going into your lungs. You feel like you're almost sucking in air into your stomach rather than your lungs. It's a very weird thing to have to try and describe to someone, but it's not fun. So I've obviously had an inhaler, which has always helped and been really great. However, I stopped dancing about 5 years ago now, which meant that I pretty much stopped needing to have an inhaler. There are still times where I do exercise, like obviously when I'm not feeling ill from pregnancy, love to walk a lot, do various other things. So I do still try and keep an inhaler on me whenever I'm doing any kind of exercise, because you just never know. So I stopped dancing around 5 years ago, and so my last inhaler, like, it expired quite a while ago, and I then tried to get it replaced in 2020. However, the time that I tried to get it replaced was during the point where, I can't remember exactly, I mean, 2020 feels like a lifetime ago in some ways, doesn't it? But I remember that there was like a medicine shortage or something, and everyone was trying to get asthma medication. Also, I can't remember exactly how it was, but I do remember the GP saying to me, because you're not, chronically asthmatic, and you can, you'll be fine if you avoid strenuous activity, just try and take it easy, and call back in a couple of months when hopefully the medication's been replenished, etc. I then forgot to call back in a couple of months, so I didn't get that prescription renewed. I didn't really even think about it until I started having these chest problems again. So obviously, being pregnant, I'm not doing any like really strenuous activity at the moment, particularly because I've not been feeling particularly well through a lot of my pregnancy. But just being pregnant puts a huge amount of strain on the body, and so I realised that alone could quite possibly be what's not helping with the breathlessness. And then on Boxing Day, my mum and I went for a short walk, which is something we always tend to do on Boxing Day. It's a bit of a traditional family, you go for a walk. It was a really nice sunny day. It was quite cold, which actually helped me, because with fainting, like I don't faint when I'm cold, I only faint when I get hot, so cold air is brilliant for walking for me at the moment. And we didn't do that long a walk, but by the time we were kind of coming back to the car, my chest was so tight that I had to stop and sit down. I felt like I was actually going to pass out, like I was trying to draw air in my lungs. I felt like I couldn't do it. And it was at that point I was like, okay, I really need to get a new inhaler. Of course, that was Boxing Day, where basically everything that is non-urgent medically wise is shut. My GP didn't open until the 28th. So cutting a long story short, I tried to get it through like a private GP service I have, because I have life insurance. Part of that is I get a free access to like an online GP service. They wouldn't prescribe it for me because they said you kind of need to go to your regular GP for this, etc. So I played a bit of back and forth around that and seeing if 111 could get me the prescription, etc. But in the end, I just had to wait until the 28th of December, and then was able to call up my GP, who wanted me to come in to see me and obviously listen to everything. And he listened to the symptoms, did a few tests, and was like, yeah, I'll get you a new prescription. So I was able to go and pick up that prescription. And one of the great things about being pregnant in the UK is that all your prescriptions are actually free while you're pregnant and for the first year after you give birth. So I was able to get my inhaler for free, which I wouldn't have done if I wasn't pregnant. And I had another episode of and then I actually had an episode of tight chestedness that evening and the next day, and I was able to use my Ventolin both times for that, and oh my god, it made such a difference. So I was right, it was my asthma playing up as well as getting bigger and like the pressure and stuff. I think the two together just combined to be a not particularly fun mix. So just a, top tip, if you're someone that has mild asthma and is usually fine, make sure you've got inhalers if you're pregnant or going to be getting pregnant, just in case you have issues later on. So breathlessness / tight chestedness / asthma, etc. That has been like probably my worst symptom the last 2 weeks. Kind of leading on from that, I had a fainting episode at a head massage that I was having done. So I mentioned on here previously that since I've been pregnant, I've really enjoyed massages. And something that I've always really liked is head massages. I just love having my head massaged. So I booked a head massage and I've had them like pretty much throughout my pregnancy, etc. And the place that we go, the massage parlor we go, they kind of know me and my mum quite well now, and they're really good with me. So they had all the right stuff. My legs were propped up, etc. I was lying on my back because I've been fine on my back up until this point, and I actually quite like lying on my back. In some ways, almost prefer it to lying on my sides actually. But I was lying on my back, and she was massaging my head, and I started to realise that I was having this breathlessness thing again. Like I felt like I couldn't get oxygen in my lungs, so I started doing some deep breaths and everything, and that wasn't helping. And then I actually had to stop her because I said, I think I'm going to faint. Like I feel like I'm going to pass out because I feel like I can't breathe. So I had to sit up. She gave me some water. I did feel a little bit sick for a bit. And then I was able to, it went away, and I just rolled onto my side, and she was able to do it with me on my side. And actually on that occasion, being on my side did help. Sometimes it doesn't, but on that time it did. But that was an experience that was the first time I've had that, like feeling faint and dizzy while actually just lying down. I think also the room might have been a little bit warm. Again, like I said, the heat obviously doesn't seem to agree with me in pregnancy. In terms of like discomfort, I seem to have been really lucky with my pregnancy actually so far, in the actual physical discomfort, aside from like the whole breathing thing, I haven't really suffered too much. I haven't had much pain. Like I had some round ligament pain, I think at around 20 weeks, when I think my uterus was kind of popping out of the muscles that were trying to hold it in there. But I haven't really had too much hip pain or like back pain or anything like that. However, the only kind of pain I have tended to notice is if I am constipated, or like bowel pain basically. So obviously when baby's getting bigger, it's kind of pushing everything out the way and squishing it up a bit. And I noticed that I would get pain like on my side or my back, and particularly down my left side of my back. But I was pretty sure it wasn't muscular and it wasn't like actual baby spinal pain. I was like, this feels like bowel pain in a way. So I've been much more careful recently with taking my magnesium. I've always taken magnesium even before pregnancy because I'm magnesium deficient. And I've started to take an extra dose, whereas typically I would take 500 milligrams every day. I now do one day where I take 500, one day where I take 1,000, 500, 1,000, etc., etc. That seems to have helped as well, and that also keeps like your bowels moving really easily, because you don't want to get constipated in pregnancy. You particularly do not want to be constipated when you give birth, because that's just going to be really painful afterwards. But yeah, that seems to have definitely helped, making sure I don't get constipated. That seems to have solved that pain. So I was pretty sure it was bowel pain. I think I'm right on that, but I guess we will find out. And then the other thing that's happened is I saw the birthing options midwife last week, who was really, really helpful actually. I was really surprised because I had no idea what to expect going into this appointment. I'd asked for it because I was having some anxieties around birth. Anxiety and depression have been things that I've dealt with throughout my pregnancy. Don't know what caused them, etc. That's why I've got a lot of support in. I've mentioned this before, like my mental health in pregnancy has been rubbish. And so I thought it might be useful to speak to the birthing options midwife just to kind of go through all my options, etc. So I met with her, wasn't really knowing what to expect. So I wasn't even really sure how long the appointment was actually. And it's interesting because it happened on where you had to go for it was not the maternity centre. It's not where I would usually go. It's actually on a ward, which is one of the postnatal wards. And she just basically had one of the regular postnatal rooms. and I was able to kind of sit in there and talk to her. And I thought this was going to be like a half-hour appointment. It ended up being an hour and a half, and she was just brilliant because she really listened to me, listened to all my worries and concerns, like answered any questions I had, went into lots of detail about things, which is what I need. Like, I need to know things to be able to kind of like make a decision, or to just to feel more happy about what may or may not happen. Just knowing all the possibilities, for me, I just find really reassuring. I'm the exact opposite of my mum in that. My mum doesn't want to know, but I'm like someone who's like, I need to know. And she was really great. And I actually ended up like telling her some of the other stuff of like the struggles of my pregnancy and how difficult it had been in some of the situations that I dealt with, and she was really supportive of that. And the other thing that she offered me actually was, she asked me who my midwife was. Now, typically you're supposed to have the same midwife throughout your care for like consistency. However, I've had 4 regular midwife appointments, so those are the ones that you have regardless of whether you need to see the consultant or have mental health input, etc. And at each of those 4 appointments, I've had a different midwife, which is not really that great because it's meant I've had to explain to each one like the issues I'm having, so I find that quite tricky. And she said to me, did I want her to take over my care, because she could arrange for my midwife care to be switched to the hospital, which actually, because I'm not living at my flat at the moment, would be closer. But I did say to her, I think the last midwife I saw said it should be her from now on, seeing me consistently until the end of my pregnancy, because there was just some rearranging going on in my local area, and I think that's what had caused me to have those 4 different midwives for each appointment. So I said to her, I think the last midwife I saw is now going to be my regular one, but I have another midwife appointment next week. And so what I agreed with the birthing options midwife was that she would give me a call the week after to see how that appointment went, and if I did have the same midwife. And if I didn't, at that point I would then look at switching over to her so she could take over the rest of my care. So that felt good actually, knowing that I now have the option to potentially sort of see the same person throughout the rest of my pregnancy, because I think particularly when you've had mental health problems in pregnancy, it's quite difficult often to drag that up over and over again at each appointment. At least I've found it quite difficult to go through that. It's quite emotionally draining. So it would be very helpful to have someone who kind of knows me and knows what I need, rather than having to explain it each time. So knowing that's an option now, it's been really good. And on the birthing side, like I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure I've decided what I want to do, but I'm still a little bit like not 100% there yet. And I have a consultant's appointment on the 18th of January who I am going to like really talk it through with. So that's probably when I'll make my final decision. That being said, however, even being like 90% sure of what I want to do has really, really helped me with like my mental health and stuff. Just kind of knowing what I want to do and what I want to happen has just given me some sort of sense of calm, and I think has really helped with some of my anxiety. Although I am still waiting for a referral back into the like the wellbeing service that I used earlier on in my pregnancy, because I saw my psychiatrist. I don't know if I mentioned this in the last video. I saw my psychiatrist on the 14th of December, and she and I both agreed that I was not at a stage where I needed medicine yet. If it got worse, then I could get referred back to her and she would prescribe me some medication, but she thought therapy / counselling would be the best thing in the meantime, which I agreed with, so she referred me back into the service. So I'm hoping I'm going to hear from them either by the end of today or hopefully by the end of next week to look at what they're gonna start doing with me there. But right now, feeling a bit better about it, and I think I said in my last video, starting to feel a bit more positive as well, and I've been kind of starting to put things together in my flat for when we move back there a few weeks after I've had baby, but also having things starting to get ready here and thinking about where like the Moses basket's gonna go, etc. So starting to prepare, but yeah, taking it one step at a time. Right, now let's get on and do the bump shot. So this is my belly at 31 weeks with my top on. Very much popped now, so in all my maternity pants from the front and from the side and the other side. So yeah, I think that is it for my 30/31 week bump date. Oh, the only other thing that I did in the last 2 weeks is I filled out my maternity allowance form and sent that off with my MAP B certificate, which the midwife gives you. So hopefully that'll all go okay and I filled that out right, but I guess we will find that out shortly. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Do please subscribe and I will see you next week. Bye everyone.